Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Lovemaking, where we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. I'm here this morning with my partner, my buddy, my co-host, Miss S. Tia Brown out of Ebony Magazine in New York. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good. You and I were talking about this interesting development with Pastor Jamal Bryant out of I want to say he's in Baltimore. I want to double check that, but anyway, Pastor Bryant was in church and he got caught kind of in a soundbite. And soundbite is the appropriate term because sound bites can really bite you in your ass. and, um, and, and so he was sound bitten, where he was caught, in church, giving a sermon, and he used the phrase, "These hoes ain't loyal." And, most people that saw the original soundbite didn't really know the context. They hadn't watched the whole sermon. They didn't know
hmm
what he was talking about. But just the fact that he used the word hose uh, really hit, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I have my thoughts on the issue, but before I start, I want to hear what you think.
Well, I think context is, a big part of this story. In the sermon, from what I gather, he seems to be talking about people being disloyal and choosing significant others or relationships based on very superficial, immediate needs. So, Loyal is a song by Chris Brown, who's a very popular pop star right now, but he's also a very troubled star rather. And the lyrics to the song aren't something that most people would want their kids singing. And I'll say it a little bit for you. When a rich Negro, he doesn't use that term, want you, and your Negro can't do nothing for you. These hoes ain't loyal. These hoes ain't loyal. Yeah, yeah. And then he begins to tell a story in this song about how, when a man has money, he can basically take him from any other man who doesn't have the same means. So I think in the context, what the pastor was kind of speaking about was that their loyalty is based on superficial things. Now, I think it's very common for pastors to use pop culture references to not only show that they're with the time, but to also kind of connect, with people in the congregation, especially people who are newcomers to church. However, I do think using the term hoes is a bit much on a Sunday morning. I don't know if I would want to hear that.
No hoeing on Sunday morning. Yes, Lord.
Especially because kids might be there too, and that's the other
Right.
thing that we forget. So it's a double-edged sword because on one hand you want to connect with the youth, you want to connect with those newcomers to church who feel like church is kind of like on this level, and if they're on that level they don't belong there.
hmm
But it's a very slippery slope, as they say. What do you think, boys?
Well, first of all, people should know that Pastor Bryant he's the senior pastor at the Empowerment Temple AME Church, and it is in Baltimore. And I just want to make sure people know that. I'm intrigued by him in the sense that I know that he's a respected orator. He's got a great following of people that really love him. I watched one of his sermons for about maybe 20, 30 minutes just to try to, sink in who he is, how he communicates, how he connects, what he talks about, etc. Now, I know that 20 minutes, 30 minutes isn't enough to really define the entirety of a person, but it's more than nothing, right? And, first of all, that particular phrase came out of a sermon called "My Enemy's Worst Nightmare," and
hmm
to give the context, as you mentioned, he was talking about. He was basically giving a message that you could see that the women in the congregation seemed to enjoy, which was one that says that a man should choose a godly woman who is going to stand by him, make him wiser, make him stronger, make him better, right? And then that is a great sell, right? I think most black women in the church are going to like that message. Now, I think you can take issue with the use of the term "these hoes ain't loyal," right? Because what you have in the dynamic here is you have a male pastor preaching to a predominantly female congregation using derogatory language to make a point, where some of the women, are going to cheer for that. But imagine a white pastor speaking to a predominantly black audience. I mean, you've had a lot of churches like this. I think guys like Benny Hinn and other people and Joel Osteen really connect with black people. So imagine a white pastor speaking to a predominantly black audience and saying, "These niggas ain't shit," or something like that, right? And a lot of you might hear a lot of black people who might cheer for that, right? Especially if it flows with the message. but it's not going to work. It's just not. I mean, it's something that people are going to say, rightfully so. That wasn't cool. You can't do that, right?
But
Um,
this is the thing with speeches. It's really about the who's delivering the message and then knowing your audience. When you look at the video, the women are going wild in the audience because most of those women don't identify themselves as hoes.
right.
And I think that becomes the issue. Is it okay to use certain language even if it's inappropriate if it will resonate? So the use of the term hoe is inappropriate, but because of the context, it resonated with the audience.
It resonated with those that we saw standing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the people that it did not resonate with are not going to stand up and say, "Wait, that didn't resonate with me." They're not going to cheer. They're going to be sitting there, or they're going to maybe make an awkward face, or kind of look down, or say, "Whoa, I can't get with that." Right? They're not going to be as loud and vocal as the ones standing up saying, "Yes, Lord." Right? So again, I think that you have to have that respect for everybody. I want to believe that Pastor Bryant, in the context of everything that's happened, might use different language if he were to address that again. But here's what's redeeming about Pastor Bryant, though. I watched one of his sermons. Like I said, I watched that 20, 30 minutes, and he was basically given a message that really talked about an important topic, which is the restoration and the protection of the black family. And his argument is that men have been disrespected in the household. There have been programs put in place to deliberately remove men from the household. He talked about the New Deal, where they would give families money if the man was not in the household and take the money away if the man was there. He talked, I'm sure he's talked about incarceration and how incarceration removed men from the household. And so to a point, I would have to say that if you're going to critique what he said in the church on this Ho's remark, you have to also blend that in with the fact that he's one of the few pastors really speaking strongly, clearly, and adamantly about the importance of preserving the black family, which most people are not discussing. Everybody's on this wave of sort of following these liberal ideologies that are out there, but we see our kids going every which way, acting out, just losing their minds because there are no fathers in the home. Right.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's not a matter of looking at him and saying this guy made a bad statement. Let's say that you assume the statement was horrendous, which I don't know. The opinions are across the board. But let's say you assume that statement was horrendous. Can you throw out the entirety of what this man is seeking to do? Can you throw out the fact that his congregation does love him? And you talk about financial lovemaking. I think that his congregation seems to be a prototype of that very strong relationship between a predominantly female congregation and their pastor, which is interesting and complex in itself. So, I guess my issue would be that maybe instead of sort of looking at these things in a black and white context, we have to look at the entirety of the picture and just realize that it is what it is, and just sort of define it as we see it, as opposed to fitting into a political camp.
I absolutely agree. I think that really, if people are outraged, it's up to them to kind of take up that torch and make complaints and then see how the pastor responds. I personally wasn't outraged, but I respect those who may feel that it was an inappropriate remark, and I challenge them to do what they deem is necessary. I'm really interested in hearing what our listeners think about this topic, so please write us and tell us what you think. Are you offended by a pastor using the term, "these hoes ain't loyal," in a sermon? Love to hear from you guys.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.